What's going on, everybody? It is Laser here with another weekend video analysis. Today it's the afternoon. It's early. My voice doesn't sound like the Sahara Desert. I feel really good. I feel really energized, and I'm happy to actually drop this analysis video. But before I begin, as always, please remember here, guys, I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm just a guy who loves looking at stock charts and sharing my thoughts. So please do your own research and consult a pro if you're going to be making any big decisions moving forward. With that being said, finally, if I want to talk about a couple things. Throughout the week, I actually made a couple of tweets talking about a potential velocity break that was up and coming. I didn't want to be right, but sure enough, it did happen, and inevitably we got that velocity break, and we also got a confirmed bearish divergence, which is normal and healthy, by the way. You get pullbacks all throughout, like these rallies. Now, it's giving us that bounce here, and which is what I want to talk about going into next week. I did tweet before I made this video on Friday that I did think we're going to get that gap fill that's going to come into that 559 before it potentially comes down and tries to gap fill on the bottom, which is going to be right around 420, 430. And I don't think we're going to get ourselves all the way down into 370. That seems out of the question. So it really, I just see maybe around 420 is the deepest retracement that I see happening. I see that potentially happen. And the way that would look actually on the velocity is it would make like that this is what you would call kind of like that retest. And the short entry, this is kind of like a lower high that it's going to be forming here if it only goes to 449. And then it gives you another bigger move down. And the reason I also lean towards that is when you look at the fib trace retracements, and this takes from the bottom to the top, we haven't tested the first Fibonacci trend line, which is 491. And that's usually your very first bullish like target. Another thing too, that makes me think that we might get a bigger and deeper retracements. Those big and deep retracements typically happen after a trend line is broken. So I'm going to give you pretty much two scenarios. NIO is either going to bounce this going into next week off this line, and you won't get that retracement, and it just goes higher. And if it goes higher, maybe it goes into 620. Then we might see that that break and that full breakdown, which is what I kind of predicted last week. I thought we'd get as high as around 620 and then kind of come down to around 490 or even 450. But things are starting to kind of, lose momentum this week. And I do believe that this is a very realistic possibility that we could see a potential short setup into next week where we get like that bigger retracement. If it does go down into that golden pocket, that's about a 17% retracement. And if it does get down to gap fill, that's about a 23% pullback. That's part of the game with NIO. Totally part of the game. It doesn't have to happen like that next week. The other scenario that I haven't printed out or haven't painted for you guys is that this was just kind of a fake out to shake some people out, and boom, going into Monday, it reclaims that trend line and off to the races we go, and straight into that $8.50 target that it's going. That's also a possibility. And I don't know. We have to wait. I actually, again, I told you why I lean towards the short side, and it's because we haven't even tested the very first fib trend line, which is at the 0.382. So it wasn't really much of a pullback, if anything. And that's why I think it needs to, at the very least, be tested. 493 needs to be tested, which goes to show you that you might want to expect potential downside of about like 10%. That may not happen. So I just don't get mad at me if it doesn't happen. It may not happen, but that's what I think is going to happen, okay? Everything else aside from that and to going into next week, it looks beautiful. We have a higher high on that velocity on the 24-hour time frame. It looks so beautiful. But with each higher high, it needs to also make a higher low. And a single day blip like that isn't enough in my eyes to actually call that. Like a higher low is something that you want to see kind of play out over a few days or even possibly a week or two. That's typically how I see things forming. Anyways, I don't want to dive super deep into that. I do want to actually touch base on the broader market and let you know if there's anything that you guys should be paying attention to when it comes to the Hang Seng Index and the Dixie. Um, when I go into the Hang Seng and the Dixie, it looks clean and ready to pop off. But just because it looks clean and ready to pop off doesn't mean it's going to happen. I can see here it broke the 200-day moving average. It's finally giving us kind of that bounce, and so if you get a bounce off that above the 200-day moving average, that just could very well mean that things are ready to take off. So not only on the Hang Seng, if we go into the Dixie, we're still trending below, so very short bias. A little bit of a caution and a tailwind here. We haven't broken the velocity here, but it has broken the 200-day moving average, which generally signals momentum is slowly shifting towards the bulls here, which would make sense. You know, we do want to see that. Now, where I would get really concerned with the equity markets, and you don't want to see it break above, and you don't want to see it retest. That would be very, very bearish for the entire stock market. And I think that would trickle down into the Hang Seng Index, and it would trickle down into NIO. So again, if you're a bull, you're going to want to see this breakdown happen. And so far, we are good. I could probably ramble on a little bit more here, but I feel like if you want to get a little bit more of a deeper insight as to where I see things going longer term, watch some of my older videos from last week or previous weeks. I talk about like bigger and larger projections. But for this video, I wanted to just focus on going into next week. To wrap it up, I did want to just let you know that if you are investing in NIO or any stock, you got to change your philosophy. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So keep your eyes on the long-term goal and try to enjoy the ride. You know, let the money work for you. You don't need to be working for the money and be staring at the chart every single day. Close it. Don't look at the chart. Close it. And before I go, I just love to hear from you. What do you guys think is going to happen next week? Are we going to get a deeper pullback? Or is it just going to rip towards my first price target at 850? I personally don't feel super confident going into next week, but I still lean towards a deeper pullback. But I'm curious to know what your thoughts are as where you see this going into next week. Please drop your thoughts in the questions in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. I'm doing my best to answer to everybody. And before I let you guys go, I want you guys all to have a fantastic weekend. And remember, patience is key. Cheers and happy investing.